Thanks again for your patience, and I guess we're ready to go. Dr. Brown? Yes, we are, and I believe there are a modification, at least one to be done.
I actually have two.
There you go, at least.
You said at least. In the consent agenda, under C for personnel, we're going to delete Roman numeral 6 in its entirety. For those of you who have it on your iPad, it's
This electronic device thing?
Yeah, it's on page 3. It'd be the top of page 3, Roman numeral 6 on the personnel report. We're going to delete that. And then I'd like to add an item after the consent agenda. I'd like to add a supplemental personnel report there, but not as part of the consent agenda, add it after.
Prior to the superintendent report.
Prior to the superintendent's report.
So we will insert there, okay? And we will discuss at that time.
And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Brett. Then on we go to public and staff. It's an opportunity for the public to share thoughts with us. And it's always a pleasure to hear from Martha.
Should I stand over here?
Anywhere.
Okay?
Oh, we have cameras everywhere,
Right here.
Martha, and you're good.
I'm pleased to say I haven't been here for a while, though I watch you online or read reports, and I like the color on the new color on the wall. But really my purpose here tonight is to thank all the teachers and community members and board members who are supporters of the arts, and make a couple of announcements. Great education starts with great teachers, and I'm sorry to say goodbye to two fantastic liberal arts teachers, Pat Amato and Charlotte Walsh of Cayuga Heights and DeWitt respectively, and the boosters would like to extend our great appreciation for the collaborations we've had with them over the years and the things they've done for our kids. In addition, I would like to just announce formally tonight, as it was done last week at a concert, and thank donor Abby Cohn for her generous scholarship established in memory of her parents, Rella and Barney Cohn. This scholarship fund will provide summer assistance for students to continue study through the Youth Bureau's Summer Orchestra and Band Camp, and will fund probably 4 to 10 scholarships. The Fine Arts Booster Group will assist the administration of this, and IPI, our home, holds the fund. And we're very, very grateful for Abby's recognition of the great music education in our school system, and the desire to support kids as they transition from middle school to high school and encourage them to continue their study in music. I was particularly moved at the concert last week. It was announced at the Boynton Band concert. She said, I really was moved by the music education that my children received, in particular her association with Mr. Allen, where her students were active in the band there. And she really wanted to articulate that students can see that music is not just something that happens in school, but music can benefit them all year round and all throughout their life. So the boosters wanted to, in particular, thank publicly Abby and her family for establishing this for the district students to continue study over the summer. Finally, I just want to say, at some point this spring semester, the Fine Arts Booster Group will light 10 candles on a cake and say, yippee, we've reached 10 years old. We are continuing all year round to celebrate with IPI the 15 years that they are celebrating this year. And under their umbrella, we're happy to be celebrating 10. And we will be highlighting that celebration with 10 stories for 10 years. And we'll share those with you as we go along. To date, we have received 118 instruments that we've refurbished and recycled back to the district. We've awarded 230 grants, for a total of $140,000 over our 10 years. So we're pleased from the support of the community and towards the belief that all kids deserve to have arts as part of their education. So thank you, and thanks for the time tonight.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.
And Pat?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to address you. In my report to the board at its last meeting regarding the disposition of New Roots Charter School, I noted that the school has received approximately $2.5 million in tuition payment and services from ICSD in the last 3 years, and it is physically sound. Tonight, I'd like to address the academic performance of the school based on Regents test scores for their first 2 years of operation. All of you may know that in order to retain its charter, New Roots must meet or exceed the performance of its district of location, which is specifically ICSD. New York's Charter Oversight Agency is now defining performance as pass rates, rather than the quality or range of scores recorded. In March of 2011, a report showed that New Roots is one of the lowest performing high schools in New York State on the 5 Regents exams they administered in 2010, and fell far below ICSD and all surrounding districts in their test scores. Their 2011 results show a striking improvement on the pass rates on Regents exams. Some pass rates that will likely exceed the performance rates of ICSD and surrounding districts when our results are released this spring. How did they do this is subject of a report I have for you tonight. In order to have a full understanding of the basis on which New Roots will seek its renewal of charter next year, it is important for all district stakeholders to have the facts. Their charter agreement clearly spells out that student performance on standardized assessment tests is the single most important factor in determining whether a charter school obtains its renewal. So, the stakes are very high for this school to produce test results that equal or exceed those of ICSD. I'm hoping that you'll take the time to review the report that I have handed over that's going to come to you through the district clerk, and become knowledgeable about the academic requirements and conditions laid out in the renewal process. I also have copies of the 2010 report for new board members that probably did not receive it last spring. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. And yeah, I would read them if, well,
Hey,
Judy
Rob?
can read them.
Hey, Rob, quick.
Go ahead.
Just, I remember last week Eldred asked an interesting question, you know, kind of about a broader view of that. And I mean, you could probably state it better than I did, but...
Then let me state it. I'm going to ask you again, each time you give us information, and I'll reiterate why I'm saying this. It's not to be pejorative, and I certainly don't mean to be condescending. I mean it. I think you and your colleagues literally have more information about that school than almost anybody else in this community. So assume the worst, and we're going to be challenged to develop a reason for New Roots to continue its existence when they renew their charter. I'm going to reiterate my request, and you and your colleagues come up with some recommendations for this body about how we could actually use that school, how we could actually recoup our 5-year investment, which will be at that point, and give us help us understand how we can actually utilize that for the benefit of the children in this district. Right now, they're serving the needs of children beyond this district. So, I don't know if it's possible, given your group's initial frustration with how they came to being. But I'm going to ask you again, could you try to stop thinking of New Roots as a deficit model and bring us some ideas about what we actually could do to advance our mission?
Okay.
Would you like me to respond?
Probably not at this time, but go ahead and respond when you have time to formulate a response and get it out to us again. So, but if I could continue with Code Red. 3 folks from Code Red are here, and please stand up, introduce yourselves, and and tell us why you're here. And I know you have an open house coming up, but tell everybody else about that.
So my name is Ishvan Burbank. I'm the president of Code Red Robotics.
I'm Fred Darrow. I'm head machinist at Code Red.
Hi, I'm Leslie Gill. I'm the Community Service and Outreach Coordinator for Code Red Robotics. I would like to talk a little bit about what we've been doing recently in the community, just to keep you guys informed, because you guys have been so supportive of us. This past year, we had 3 LEGO League teams at BJM Elementary School. We had 1 LEGO League team at DeWitt that is brand new, and we also had one in Trumansburg. Next year, we hope to keep those same teams going, as well as one at Bell Sherman Elementary School, and Caroline Elementary School, and Fall Creek Elementary School. So we're really trying to reach out to the younger kids in our district and help get them involved in robotics, as we are now involved, and very passionately so. That's what we are hoping to do this next year. We are also, in order to get the word out to the community about robotics and children being involved in such a life-changing aspect of learning, having an open house Saturday, February 4th, which the board members have a flyer about. We will be taking LEGO donations in order to support these teams, and we will be talking and trying to network in the community on how we can start as many teams and affect as many kids as possible and help them in order to strengthen their careers and their futures. So if you would like to come, you are more than invited. It's from 1 to 3 in the tech buildings, and we will be talking about what we do and what we hope to have the children doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicely done. Board responses in a minute, but go ahead, Pat, since we're standing.
I would just, if you could explain to the board what task the robot you're developing has to complete this year for the first robotics competition.
Sure thing. So there's an international organization called FIRST, and there are hundreds of teams around the world under this organization. And once a year for the high school level team, FRC, which we're a part of, FIRST releases a game which every team builds a robot to play. So our robot has a maximum of 120 pounds, and it's 28 by 38 inches, so it's a fairly sizable robot. And this year it's going to be playing a modified version of basketball. So it's a 3-on-3 game, and there are 4 hoops at either end of the field. And with 18 balls in the field, these teams of 3 compete against each other to score balls during a 2-minute game. So if you come actually this Saturday, we will be building that, and you can check out the fabrication process.
We have the hoops set up. They're very impressive.
And they can use all the help they can get from those who know about basketball.
And as far as I know, the higher the hoop, the more the points. See, I read things. The higher the fewer, the higher the more. Anything else for Code Red? We always like to see Code Red. Many of us will be there on the 4th, not this weekend, but the next weekend. 1 to 3, and enter on the technology side. You know, don't park in the other main parking lot, because it's going to be hard to walk around. So you really have to park in the back, and the technology doorways will be open, which is on the Lake Street side. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Deb. Fred.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public want to speak now that did not sign up? I'm not seeing it. Student reps, I'm not seeing anyone from Ithaca High School. Apparently there's nothing going on there, but LACS is always here, and Aviv.
I'll actually pass it over to Noah to start.
So our first semester ended last Friday, and this week, during Regents Week, we're spending our time exhibiting work and taking assessments, and the 10th and 11th grade students are taking the one state test required at LACS, the ELA Regents English exam.
And on Thursday and Friday, we will have our conference days with students, parents, caregivers, and family group leaders. Here we will review our second cycle and actually first semester evaluations, including self-reflections and contrasted by teacher narrative feedback. Every year at these conferences, students will showcase one piece from their portfolio of that year, This year we're showcasing science pieces. They're going to have to defend why they chose that piece to showcase and why it shows how they learned and critical thinking. Also, this year on our custom online evaluation website, over 3,200 evaluations were written by staff between Friday night and this morning, so that's a whole ton. In fact, staff will write up to 160 evaluations or 50 pages worth of evaluations 4 times a year, so it's a big deal for them, and we really are grateful for them for doing that and taking the time out of their hectic schedule to do that.
4 LACS students were recently informed that they have been selected to represent Tompkins County as Rotary Exchange students next school year, and the 4 are headed to Argentina, Poland, Brazil, and Denmark.
Students on our site-based council committee recently presented the final progress report for the 2009 through 2012 school development plan, and we will now be asking for input from the school community on what should be incorporated into our currently under development 2012 through 2015 3-year strategic and continuous improvement plan. That's enough.
In an effort to reduce the wait and our lunch and increase healthy options at our school, a senior team has been developing a salad and soup bar to provide another lunch option to promote choice and expedite service. At breakfast, the school has piloted a winter-time oatmeal bar with local toppings, and it's received very positive reviews.
Our school continues to communicate and often and work closely with Dr. Brown as well as Assemblywoman Barbara Lipton on formalizing LACS's exemption to the State Education Department's Race to the Top numerical grading mandate in order to remain one of the only 2 known public secondary schools not to issue actual grades, but instead qualitative narrative evaluations, like I mentioned earlier. The only other school to do this is Rochester's School Without Walls.
February 15th is the annual State of the School event. It is hosted by our principal, Joe, and features other stakeholder perspectives in an interactive dialogue about the successes and challenges at LACS.
Thanks, Noel. Next up, we've had a fair amount of board responses already. Any other board responses at this time? And Pat, certainly the prize at the end of the meeting or at some other time, feel free to respond, but that's an opportunity to respond to board members. And so I guess we're on to consent agenda, correct?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Not everybody at once.
I did.
Go ahead, Judy. Any comments on the consent? Are we
You'll
good?
note the NYSERDA grant that was mentioned at the last meeting, $99,000 to provide a retrofit for 31 of our buses so they don't have to idle. They can start their diesel engines and not have to idle.
Oh, that's right, I recall. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else? Without further, all in favor? That's everyone. Consent agenda passes, and I should note that we always read our personnel reports to the last and final item on their report, and on that report, on item I, there's an appointment, and Kira Johnson was appointed tonight to be the school board clerk. And it's a good thing we did it tonight because you start tomorrow. We always, just in time board work, that's always good. So Kira, welcome to the city school district, and Doreen is the happiest person that you can possibly have in Ithaca, New York, and Central New York, actually, I think. So in the future, you will be seeing Kira up here, and Doreen has been up here a lot over the last year and doing many, many duties above and beyond what Doreen always does with the superintendent. So we are always very grateful for Doreen's help. Has always been excellent, always willing to do that extra, and we appreciate that. We've stated in the past, stated again today. So you will resume your more normal duties, and you will not always have to be here on Tuesdays and whenever else we need you. But we welcome Kara to the group and look forward to working with you. And we're going to move on. Very good. Roll applause. Roll applause. And to that end, we have a little bit more personnel work at this point, I believe, and that is the modifications of the agenda that Brad put forward.
I'll move the supplemental personnel recommendation dated January 24th.
I'll second. For the benefit of the public, this is a short resolution, but it does deal with the superintendent's contract, and this is in fact an extension of the superintendent's contract. Those of you who are aware, we signed a contract with Dr. Brown approximately a year ago, and that was a three and a half year contract. We are well into that contract. We did our prescribed December evaluation. We do a full-blown evaluation in the summer at the end of the school year. Dr. Brown started mid-year. It's been a year now. And so certainly the public knows, staff knows, we have enjoyed a very good working relationship with Dr. Brown. We feel we are moving the district certainly where we want to go. Dr. Brown and we talk about the expectations that we have for the district's expectations for us, for the community, for frankly Dr. Brown. For us, it was going to be very useful if we could just lengthen the contract a bit. There's really no other changes to the contract other than a date. And so the end date of Dr. Brown's contract will be June 30th, 2016, and will continue to be a one-year annual renew. But instead of 3 years, just doesn't seem long enough at this point. So we're going to go 5 years. That's pretty typical. And after 1 year, we wanted to go ahead and have and extend that contract to 2016. And I'll entertain any other comments, anyone at this point. Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. This is simple in my mind. This is an opportunity for the district to keep an outstanding superintendent. We've done a lot this year. We've been impressed with your ideas, your energy, your commitment to students, your leadership. You're everything and more that we looked for when we went out for that search, and this in no way means you slack off now. but we're making that commitment to you, and just the same way you've made that to us this past year, and we're looking forward to working with you. Being bold, making good things happen for our students. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
And we've, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate a couple of things, particularly about the process, and since we're trying to operate on a good deal of transparency with also paying particular attention to the personnel that's at hand. But there are a number of things in terms of trying to evaluate superintendent based upon our priorities that have been identified, since that's been the public way in which has gone about it. And the evaluation process from the board has been very interesting and extremely positive. It's not to say there's work to be done, it's not to say that we don't have a long road ahead or there's difficult tasks. But it's clear that within a year you hit the ground running. The number one concern, as I said to you before earlier, is the amount of time, which is that's in your day, and how we negotiate that. And also for us to continue to put goals that are actionable and how we translate what we do at the board level and the superintendent level into classrooms. And so I want to clarify something that Rob said. It's not that there's really nothing changes in the contract. Nothing does change in the contracts, with the exception of the date, right? And so for us, this is a commitment to the way and the direction in which we're headed forward, and looking forward to the good deal of work and the continued collaboration amongst a great deal of folks that have been invited to the table into the process. And so, as saying to my board members earlier, that the formal training of me forces me to be critical frequently and look for critiques and problems. And I have to remind myself every now and then it's time to step back and say a job well done when it's been a job well done. And so I'll reserve my critiques and comments for us privately. And publicly I'll say a very good job well done, Dr. Brown. And we're looking forward to more work in the future.
But it's only been a year here, so we've got a ways to go, Dr. Brown. Eldred, you, I think, wanted to say something.
I just wanted to thank When I joined the board 3 years ago, I actually asked the executive team and the leader at the time to talk to me in terms of children. And they had a very difficult time doing it. So we continued to actually discuss facilities in a way that was unrelated to children. We continued to discuss contracts and the jobs of adults, how many hours they spend here, unrelated to children. We even somehow figured out a way to discuss discipline, unrelated to children, as if we have 15,000 kids, except the 60, and I know all their names. So I truly want to thank you for changing the tone of the conversation in this district. So we're actually speaking about kids. Thank you.
Anyone else? And I believe this item was moved, second, correct? So it's really up to just a vote. If no other comments, all in favor? That's everyone, and so on we go. And so now we're on to the superintendent's report, because
Wow.
you apparently still have a job.
While you're ahead.
I have several items tonight, but I would like to start by saying I'm honored and so fortunate to live in this community. Not only live in the community, but to serve as a learning leader has been beyond my wildest dreams. So this has been one of the best years of my life, personally and professionally. My family's grown in the last year. We have new friends. I have second mothers. Many of them are sitting in the audience around here. People have taken care of us in so many ways. They pushed my thinking. They pushed me as a man, as a husband, as a parent. So this has been the best fit for me and my family, and I want to say that to you. And to say to you that we're all in. My wife and my children are listening at home, I'm sure, and they would say so if they could, if we could Skype in. They would say, we're all in here. What we're doing is going to change the world for young people. We literally will change the world for young people. And I had an opportunity to speak at Ithaca College last night, and I was inspired by the music and what they were saying about Martin Luther King. And my prepared words went away, and I just spoke from my heart, and we talked about how we're already changing the world in the conversation. I'm only as good as the community and the people who are supporting me and who are around me, and I've learned that I'm just one person. And when I look around at board members, your vision and your support of me have allowed us to change the world in a year, and will continue to allow us to change the world. When I look at the people in the audience who are putting books into young people's hands, instruments into young people's hands, when I look at leaders of teachers who worked this week to pull together a staff development opportunity that was one of the best I've ever been a part of. I know that I'm only as good as the people who are working with us. A year ago, walking into this job, I was told that we couldn't collaborate with the teachers union by some folks, that we wouldn't be able to get things done. Yesterday, we had the leadership, and we had one of the best teacher evaluation rubrics in the country, from my perspective, that was done by educators in conjunction with administrators in just a short time. So this work, I'm only as good as the people who are working with me, but I'm here to tell you, I'm just happy to be along for the ride as a community member. When I introduce myself to groups, I can introduce myself as a community member, not as superintendent, and that's purposeful, because we're doing this work together. So I just want to say thank you to all of you, and to the folks who are listening at home, for bringing this young bald guy from Virginia up here, and teaching me how to lose this accent, and to grow. So,
I'm not sure we've been successful.
you haven't done it. It's only been 1 year, Bob.
Yeah.
One year. So moving along, again, speaking to the PLC day, it was, many of you were there, but I just wanted to inform the board that we had a day-long professional development opportunity in which we talked about the work. I think I realized when standing up in front of staff that my honeymoon is over, and I hope that staff realized that their honeymoon is over, because we got down into the weeds, into the trenches about teaching and learning, and what it's going to take to move those achievement results forward for all young people. We didn't get everything done, but the conversations were started and sparked yesterday. And again, I had very little to do with that. Ms. Evelyn, the great leaders that support me, teachers, they came to the table to pull that together. And I sat back and enjoyed it. So just wanted you to know that we had that opportunity, and we're looking forward to a March day and then some summer staff development opportunities as well. Extended day, enriching the day generates excellence. I just wish to give you an update on where we are with that particular initiative. We all know that we're in the process of redefining what a school day is. Before and after school times are going to be something we must look at as far as how we service our young people. So we've had a summit in which we brought some of the best thinkers in the community together to talk about what is possible when we think about times that are traditionally before or after school. And some great thinking came out, and we're working on a project charter that's going to move some of that work forward, and we'll be putting a formal proposal in front of you as far as next steps for next year. But I wanted to update you about some work that's already happening, just because of the excitement around Enriching the Day Generates Excellence program. And I have a list of things. We have a movement and dance group that's meeting, and they're using our dance studio, which hadn't been used much up until now. Not only are they using it, but they're also performing in front of crowds, i.e. the basketball games. And from what I'm hearing, it's pretty good. We have a percussion group that's going to start practicing using one of our practice rooms in the in Coke. And that group is going to be performing as part of some other performances and concerts in the coming weeks. We're also partnering with Ithaca College and some of the folks there who are coming down to teach not only how to use those drums, but the languages that are associated with it. Am I correct with that, Mr. Nunn? Ms. Nunn has been integral in it. His leadership has been so special to get some of this up and running. Intramural basketball is starting. Intramural basketball is going to start soon, before school. Yes, it's basketball. Yes, it's going to be about athletic competition and being in shape. But we're also infusing the statistics and probability aspect into this as well. We're going to take stats. There's going to be an officiating course associated with this intramural program. But I just wanted you to know that the jerseys are out, and at 8 o'clock, at least one day a week, and we're hoping to get to 2 days a week. We're going to have an intramural basketball program starting up soon. And about it, our middle schools are working hard. They're doing academic enrichment and intervention support. So both, Boyd, I know at the last board meeting we approved a grant for one school to do some things after school. And I wish to inform the board that DeWitt is also doing some things. So we have, under our Enriching the Day Generates Excellence program umbrella, we have middle school opportunities 3 days a week. Mr. Knight, correct? Yes, 3 days a week after school with our educators working with our young people. And I could go on and on, but that's it. I just wanted you to know the Enriching the Day program is up and running already, although we're still working on the formal charter that we'll bring to you in the coming months as far as the next step for next year. And I think that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Very good, Dr. Brown. Good first steps. And I guess we'll roll right into school district business, and
I'll move Roman 5A as presented.
And this has something to do with Madrid, which apparently is in Spain, although I've never been there. Some kids, I guess, are going to go. Is that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Pat. The attachment is in your board docs that was loaded. You could read about it. This is a trip that is taken fairly often. Mr. Power, well, here we go. And do you care to speak?
I want to add, most kids come back.
Most kids come back?
But can we make a request? Okay, I'm sorry. We'll bring them on.
So you've seen the docs associated with this trip. Are there any questions? How do I get on? Should I move it? We've already moved. It's moved. Let's go. All in favor? I think we're all in favor. Once again, kids go where I do not. That's
Get used to it.
Can't go anywhere. I have to go to board meetings. So we're going to continue on, and the next is a WHAM presentation. And someone's presenting. Oh, Aviv, this is you.
I'd like for folks to come to the table to share. The acronym stands for Welcoming Allies as Mentors.
I saw it somewhere. No, it's the international trip. It's right there, Jay. We're having trouble with our iPads because we are really so good. I would have to say that
we took those were talking points only for them, and it probably was in there alone. So
I did see it somewhere.
Yeah, we took those out.
And Dr. Brown, I'd have to say I did pull up the talking points, and I did read it on my iPad, and to me, I took a glance. I thought it said welcoming aliens, and I said, oh wow, we're our first contact. But then I saw it was...
We'd be very welcoming if they did.
Exactly. But Aviv, what is this all about?
Sure. Well, I am, and Hannah Felchu and myself are representatives from Welcoming Allies and Mentors. It's our school's answer to kind of an anti-bullying campaign, as well as welcoming and orienting new students to our school. So that's what we will be sharing briefly with you tonight. So what we do is it's a kind of a program developed by students. We come together once a week to talk about how we're going to move forward in terms of anti-bullying work and anti-bias work, to try to better our school community, as well as how we can wholly incorporate new students into our school community. And I think that is kind of our main purpose for the group. And I'll turn it over to Hannah now.
Okay, yeah. What I think is so great about it is that it's able to combine two really important goals. One of mentorship and welcoming new students, but also working on what we like to call upstander behavior. So refusing to stand by and see bullying or see bias or prejudice, and working on education around those issues.
And my talking points say that it aligns with RTI Tier 1 initiative. I'm sure you all know what that means.
I'm very happy to hear that.
RTI Tier 1
I love it.
Way to link to the bureaucracy there. State of New York, Aviv. I mean, this is important stuff. Exactly. But go ahead.
Well, great. It also helps, I think, to create a culture of empathy and kindness, as well as inclusion, which is particularly important at our school because it's 6 through 12, so it's a very broad community in terms of age and developmental levels.
And what Hannah said about age, a lot of what we do at our school is about trying to connect with younger students, and I think that that's kind of centered in the program, is older students connecting with younger students, making friendships that probably wouldn't have been there otherwise, learning something from both stakeholders, and I think that that's a really important aspect of the program.
And it also really heavily involves students and is a student-run and generated program. So there's a core team, and then also a whole other network of mentors that meet weekly and get to serve as role models and leaders, and are working with staff and just becoming the leaders of our school as well.
Right, you can't throw a stone in the school without hitting a WAM mentor. And if you did, a WAM mentor would be there to tell you not to throw stones.
He's got an audience.
Well, back to, in all seriousness, we do kind of look at our school and find needs and look at places where we think there could be improvement, and then we as a group talk about ways that we can move forward in improving those issues. So one example is there was some problems last year with budging in the lunch line. And a lot of younger students were saying that, older students would just get right in front of them and, they didn't feel like they had a voice. So WAM stepped in and we put monitors all throughout the lunch line, just to be there to let students know that it's not okay to budge, and though you're just one person and you feel like it might not make a big difference, it's a respect issue. So, and we took a survey before and after our intervention into the lunch line, and students said that it certainly helped. So that's just one of the things of how we look at our school and kind of try to come up with solutions.
Great, and moving to more of an overview of how our program works specifically. It started out with a core team of students that helps to train and oversee the other mentors in addition to mentoring incoming students. And they also work on reviewing the orientation and our training process.
Yeah, and the selection process for our core team, it's all about inclusion. We try to have students from all different kind of walks of our school, just because we feel, for younger students and new students, there's going to be all different kinds of new students, and to be able to pair them with students that they can connect with and identify with, I think is really helpful in orienting them to a new school and such a drastic change.
And I think, interestingly, some students who you might not think would be good role models or mentors end up being so, just because they're encouraged and WAM says, we believe in you, we know that you can make the right choices and be a good role model for other students.
Right. And there's a lot of training for our mentors. We meet throughout the summer to get our mentors ready, not only to be helpful so they know about what to say, about how to introduce students to our school, but how to be good role models and how to, when you see bullying and bias in our school, how to be, like Hannah said, an upstander in our community.
And then we work on the first day of school, we lead new students around and get to know each other. And also we're sort of the face of the older students, welcoming them and telling them a little bit more about our school.
And each mentor meets with what we call their mentees, as long as their mentees feel like they need meeting with. I've had students that after a couple weeks say, you know what, I feel like I know the school and you don't have to see me anymore. And I have students that from a couple, like 2 years ago, that I still talk to and help them out with work through issues. So I think it is a lifelong relationship as long as the younger students want it. So I think that's a big part of the program.
And then during our weekly meetings, we get to hear a little bit more about some really important topics. So we've talked about study skills, we've talked about dating violence, we've talked about sort of bullying, different types of bullying, so cyberbullying and how we can address that. But all different ways that we can continue to educate ourselves and help to make our school better.
And certain mentors take on different roles with tutors to help students in need, and mediators. We have one student who's working with a group of younger girls who's had a hard time assimilating into our school culture, and she's just kind of sitting with them and being a listener to trying to help them work through their problems to try to get better incorporated with our school. And I think that was our overview of the program. I think we stayed under our 10-minute time slot.
We appreciate that.
Especially
Do you have any
bullets.
questions?
Right, questions
Yeah,
from the group?
certainly.
Judy?
I know that you said that you've worked a couple of years. At what age or grade do mentors start?
Currently, we have it starting with 8th grade,
Okay.
so 8th grade and up.
Other questions? Go ahead, Anthony.
It feels like this is one of those moments we keep joking about, the fact we've had this great alternative school in our presence, and we haven't learned anything from them in 25 years. Now, I know there's some elements of what you guys are talking about happening at the high school, but you may be aware that just this weekend there was a pretty significant article in our local journal, Ithaca Journal, about bullying. And they mentioned the names of young people who have actually taken their lives. For GLBT issues, girls just being bullied by girls. The current case came up, and some instances in Trumansburg. The article indicated that the groups are serious, whether they have a bias officer or not. We do exactly what you guys are doing. Have older students intercede, have children in the middle, between the two, actually utilize their voice. Do you have any idea what your colleagues at high school are doing? That's the first question I want to ask you. And then the second question I'd like to ask is, are there any natural conduits right now for you to have that conversation with your peers there and share with them what you guys do at ACS?
I'm not clear on what students at the high school are doing. I'm sure they have a program.
Link Crew.
Link Crew, I've heard of that, yeah. And but I think last week we presented at a workshop for administrators and school therapists, and I think that doing more things like that to try to connect with different people in the community and try to show them, here's our model of how we do it, and we try to be very open about, people can come certainly talk to us and try to learn from us, and we can try to learn from other schools and kind of develop our program more fully. In fact, we're in talks with schools out in Colorado about implementing programs similar to WAM there, and I think it's really, we have a lot to learn from other schools, and I think that we hope other schools can learn from us, and we're happy to have those conversations.
Anyone else? Excellent as always, Avi. Thank you. Hey, Hannah, sorry. Hannah, couple.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. On to Love Those Letters. It's been up on our screen for a while, but we're going to come back to Love Those Letters again, Dr. Brown.
Yes, once more in our life. some friends to come to the table. And tonight we want to take a deeper look into the program and specifically speak to some data points that we have, having had the program in place for how many years? A few years now.
1 year.
1 year, okay, 1 year. We have some data to show that it's making a significant impact already for us. Now, with that, I'll turn it over. And Bridget, you're not coming to the table?
Just a spectator.
Oh, all right.
Which is always welcome.
Well, great. Well, go ahead.
Sure.
Just go ahead and introduce yourselves for the folks at home and everyone in the room.
I'm Carol Cedarholm. I'm a reading teacher at Northeast Elementary School, and Love Those Letters is an extension of a sabbatical project I did 2 years ago.
Don't be so, you're the creator. She's the creator of Love Those Letters, so don't be humble. And I'm Lynn Van Wert, and I'm the primary literacy staff developer here in Ithaca, so I work with K through 5, pre-K through 5 teachers from district.
And what we're going to do tonight is to share data results from the pilot project last year, and you were given a report that has a narrative and also some charts and graphs that Lynn and I put together during the summer, this past summer, after we looked at the data. Anyway, I want to start by describing the pilot project. My sabbatic was in the spring of 2010, and I've shared with you what that was, so I won't go into that. But the following school year, last year, we instituted Love Those Letters in 3 of the schools, elementary schools, BJM, Northeast, and Fall Creek. And the pre-K, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grades, as well as support staff, received all the Love Those Letters materials, books, and they also had professional development, one in the summer prior to the school year, and another one in the spring, in which we got a lot of feedback from people, and let's see. And in addition to that, pre-K and kindergarten students received the book and the DVD thanks to a number of grants and support from Connie Evelyn's office, the Eugenie Fund from Community Foundation. And this year we've continued to supply those materials, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the data that Lynn is going to describe was taken during this past school year from the PALS assessment, and she'll talk more about that.
So after doing this pilot, we obviously wanted to kind of find out how it worked and if Love Those Letters really did have the impact that we thought it would by bringing a more consistent approach to teaching letters and letter sounds in the district. And so to do that, we looked at disaggregated data from our Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening, or PALS. And that is a early literacy assessment that comes out of the University of Virginia. We've been using it in the district for about the past 5 or 6 years. And it measures, at the kindergarten level, it measures 5 early literacy skills: rhyme awareness, beginning sounds, alphabet recognition, letter sound recognition, and then it has a basic spelling test where kids are asked to write basic consonant words. And so we really focused in mostly on the letter sound subtest, because Love Those Letters being directly connected to teaching letters and letter sounds. And also letter sounds is, although there is definitely data for both sides, but it is considered a valid predictor of reading success at the kindergarten, 1st grade level. So that's why we kind of focused in on there. When we looked at this data, we looked at, we disaggregated it according to traditionally underperforming subgroups. So we looked at special ed students, we looked at students receiving free and reduced price lunch, and we looked at Black and African American students. And we compared data between pilot schools and non-pilot schools, and then we also looked between 2009-2010 school year and 2010-2011 school year. It would have been great to go back further, but our data is not that solid and consistent in previous years, just because of the ways we were collecting it in kind of a lack of a place to put it all. So that's why we stopped there. So, what did we find? It was really, I mean, both Carol and I were really excited because I think we found exactly what we were hoping to, that even though this is, you know, very preliminary, 1 year, small sample size, just one class of students, there was clear evidence that traditionally underperforming groups really did experience greater success learning letters and letter sounds in schools that were implementing the Love Those Letters. I won't even call it a program because it's just using materials and tools. So here you can see in this slide that when we compare pilot to non-pilot schools, special ed students or classified students scored higher at the mid-year and end of the year assessment of letter sound, even though when they started lower. So they started at 8 letter sounds. This is median scores, and they ended at 24. Whereas in the non-pilot schools, they started higher, knowing 10 letter sounds, and ended at 22.5. So that was really exciting. When we looked and compared to previous years, this is just within the pilot schools, you can see the dramatic change, just in 1 year, by changing the materials we were using to teach letters and sounds, how you can just see the impact. So the yellow dotted line is the benchmark that's set by University of Virginia. So you can see in 2009, 2010, our students were scoring below benchmark, our classified students, for most of the year. Exciting stuff. Do you want to add anything?
One of the things that I think we really, is a really marked improvement is how the learning was accelerated in the early part of the year. I mean, at the end of the year, most of the students are pretty close to knowing most of the letter sounds. But the jump is really between the fall score and the winter score is really very dramatic. And to me, that means that they're learning their letter sounds more quickly, so the teachers are able to teach additional skills, and so that they're not spending the entire year learning letters. They're learning their letters, and then they're being able to use their letters to read and write and do a lot of other work with. So.
Carol, may I add that that's when the book and DVD and CD went home, is in that time as well? That's the exact time frame.
Yeah, and just to give you kind of a time frame of when this assessment takes place in the fall, it happens 6 weeks after the start of the school year, so kids did have some exposure in teaching prior to the fall administration. So that could help explain why the difference, even in the fall, because there was some teaching. Now, when we looked at other subgroups, we only included classified students today just for time, and you have the rest all there in your report. But we found a similar trend when looking at students receiving free or reduced price lunch. For Black and African American students, the numbers were more mixed. When we looked at average letter sounds, the trend was the same. When we looked at median, our Black and African American students actually scored lower in our pilot schools than in our non-pilot schools. It's interesting when we look at the demographics. That's in the pilot schools, it's a group of 10 students, so it is a really limited sample size. But I think that's something that needs further just digging into and seeing what's going on.
Can I ask a question? It seems like the consistency of materials or approaches is the idea behind this. When you have, I assume these are kids in a particular group, of, in a class with a particular teacher, right?
Well, it was for all students in kindergarten. So these are kindergarten students. So these are all classrooms within the pilot schools represented here. So all kindergarten classrooms at Fall Creek, Northeast, and BJM.
So I guess my point is that there's a consistent approach for any particular class because they have the same teacher using his or her own materials to describe letter sounds and things like that. So I'm not sure when it would ever come into play that one student would, one day have, teacher number 1 use a different symbol than teacher number 2, because it would always wouldn't it have to be consistent within the classroom, and the kid would only be dealing with the particular teacher who's
No, and because you have to consider the co-teaching that goes on through support with ESOL, reading teachers, special ed.
So that's where the consistency comes in between all those
When we're
other
looking
teachers.
at just one grade level, so the kind of the next step is that this would be a cross grade level, so that we're using a consistent approach from pre-K to kindergarten to first grade, and all using the same keywords and language around letters and letter sounds, which had not been happening in the district. There were, I think as Carol shared during her static, there were different alphabets being used in every building, and sometimes at different grade levels within the same building.
And that posed a particular difficulty with kids who struggle with learning. I mean, if you're learning that the letter A makes a sound like an alligator in pre-K, and then you go to kindergarten and there's no alligator in the room, it's now an apple or something. I mean, for a kid who is able to cope with different kinds of learning styles and has some flexibility in their learning ability, that's not a problem. But for other kids who are learning English for the first time, kids who have difficulty focusing, kids who have perceptual difficulties, that lack of consistency is really a problem. And in the first graders that I've been teaching, I would spend the first 6 months of my group work with them just teaching the alphabet. These are first graders. And, you know, you're looking at kids from higher incomes are coming into kindergarten knowing all letter sounds. But there's this underperforming group that's still, 7 years old in first grade not knowing them. And so my feeling was that having a consistency between schools, within a school, would really help those kids.
Yeah, that was my mistake. I was trying to think, I assumed that kind of the teacher was the consistent one, but I hear all the other folks coming in, and then the consistency from grade to grade. So.
Right.
Go ahead, Alden.
This is an example of what we actually would love to see more unsabbatic work. So thanks for this. And looking at the data, as we become a data-driven school district, your data is obvious. Now I have to say something else, and you guys have to help us figure this out. So when I joined the board, a retired teacher on the board who will go unnamed handed me a picture of her working with an African-American student in 1969. And the subtitle of the picture was, clearly, phonological work decreases the time in which it takes those young African-American students to grasp their letters, and to have work like this, and they can decrease the gaps if they come into K through 3, I believe it was, or maybe it was middle school. So this almost feels sacred. So once again, we as adults are patting ourselves on the back because we've come up with a new bullet. The teacher who will remain unnamed showed me a picture, and say it again, from 1969. So what you just presented was no. So the question I have for the adults is, how do we keep screwing this up? And conversely, how do we get to a point where this becomes so ingrained in our system with flexibility for kids and for teachers who understand that this is not working for those kids in that class, but your data is indicating that it does work. How do we stop screwing up our children? How do we stop forgetting this after a superintendent leaves, after a department chair retires, after teachers who actually understand how to work with certain cohorts decide to do something else? So consider that rhetorical. I know you guys don't have the answer for that. It made me think
Perhaps
about
Dr. Brown will
Yeah, my job is always to answer your rhetorical question. And I thought we were extending me tonight. You talking about me leaving, but this data is compelling. And I like to think I've been around literacy, early literacy, for a long time. Not nearly as long as you, Carol. But I think I know a little bit about it. I've never seen anything like what's happening with Love Those Letters here in our community. Yes, there's a science to this work that we're just repeating what we know works as far as teaching young people how to read. But what's happened is it's taking off because of the art associated with it. I don't know if it's the branding or the jingle or the what, but every kid in this community is speaking the same language now, and I know I'm seeing it transfer from classroom to classroom, grade level to grade level. When you have a 19-month-old child picking up the book every day and reading it, or listening and saying "Hi, cow" as the first sentence they ever say, because Kyle Walker's saying something on the screen, and having that be the only video they watch more so than Yo Gabba Gabba. Something is happening around the art, around this work. I think that's what's different here. As someone who studied, let me say, 14 years now, trying to figure out how to teach it better in kindergarten and first grade, this is the best I've ever seen, and now we got data to show it. So I think we have one of the best kept secrets in the nation right now. And I'm looking forward to working with Bridget and the Family Reading Partnership to figure out, again, we talk about changing the world, we got something that may be able to scale.
So if it's a 19-month-old I'm thinking about, she must be searching for the app.
No, it's a YouTube video. It's a YouTube video that she...
And she loves the book.
And she loves the book.
As soon as I get her to sit down with me.
But to your point, Dr. Brown, and I'll call on Bridget, but I think it's important to note, again, this is a community-based program. It's not the question of being different from one elementary school to the other or one classroom to the other. This is a community-based program. Bridget, you had your hand up. But that is getting this book, other books, into all households in the community. Bridget, you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to add that, well, first of all, that it is that collaborative force, always. So it's Carol bringing all of what she knows and her expertise from the school side, and then melding that whole community family side together. What we have heard over and over again that doesn't show in slides is that this part of, we talk and talk and talk about families' roles as partners, as supporters, but now through this, they actually have the tools. So we've provided them with tools in their home so they can now be our partners and they can be successful at it. So we've multiplied the impact on both sides. And the bridge is quite amazing between home and school with this. And that's what we hear over and over, is teachers saying, we have never seen families respond to anything in the way they're responding to this.
And, Sean, go ahead.
So to follow up on that, Elder, I think the unnamed person who gave you that picture was part of the story, right? That I think this program is different. I've had the pleasure of watching my nieces do it as well and ask for it, right? Which has been fascinating. In large part because it does more than just merge phonetics. I think it's someone heard say the song, beyond Cal and other folks playing, it's the physicality, it's the movement, it's signing, it's merging all these various multiple intelligences together, which reaches kids in various ways. What should be known should be doing, which is great. So the question I have, in terms of phrasing that into a question, is what is the recommendations forward? Well, let me rephrase it. The last piece of what Bridget just said as well is what I noticed, is that the fact that folks have these now in their homes, the fact that good folks were able to send these homes with students, and so young folks can not just do this in school, but have access to it elsewhere. I think that's going to have a dramatic impact. And I'm looking to see what our data looks like in 2 years when we have a bunch of 3 and 4-year-olds who've been seeing Love Those Letters come into our classrooms in a couple of years. And so I think while the data is great now, I think we're going to see some dramatic impacts, right? With that being said, though, what's the recommendation forward? What are the positives? Is that coming up in the report?
That is coming up.
Is that a nice segue to help you all?
Yeah, that's fine.
Like that? Keep it moving.
Right. Do you want to share about our visits first before we go to the next steps? Because I think that did inform.
Okay, all right. So last week, Lynn and I spent 2 days visiting all the pre-K, kindergarten, first grade classrooms in all 8 elementary schools to see to what extent the materials are being used in every classroom. As of this fall, all of those classrooms in our school district have the materials, and they look like this. These are wall cards and desk strips and charts and other really giant wall cards and a beautiful big book and a poster and matching cards. So every classroom, thanks to Connie Evelyn's office and, help me,
Lots of different funders.
lots of different funders. Anyway, got these materials, and so Lynn and I went and visited every single classroom, 74 of them, including ESOL, speech, special ed, and there was evidence in every single room we went into that Love Those Letters materials are being used. They're being used in, did you go back to the one before this? They're being used in lots of consistent ways. We took a survey as we were going through, and 84% of the classrooms had the wall cards up in their rooms. I think 80% had the poster up. You can see the poster in the middle slide. And then the classrooms had various other materials. You can see the desk strips on a desk over there. The books were in bookshelves. The matching cards were being used to play games. The small cards were being used as word walls to put high-frequency spelling words up there. The chart was being used in writing folders, and we saw this over and over and over and over again in almost all the classrooms. And then in addition to that, we saw some really unique, innovative uses of the materials, and I took some pictures of those here. You can see in a pre-K classroom they were painting eggs for E, and that was out in Enfield. Belle Sherman teacher had the kids do drawings of some of the key words and took pictures of them making hand signs. A pre-K teacher up at Cuba Heights, thanks to her mother, did the kids' names along with the keywords. A special ed teacher at Fall Creek had her bag of classroom of materials that she brought from room to room with the matching cards on a ring there. Kindergarten teacher at Caroline had a Velcroed game, and teachers were sending home newsletters with suggestions about how to incorporate the Love Those Letters into homework. A teacher at Enfield made her own poster of the hand signs, and a couple of them put the poster in the bathroom. And then a teacher at BJM made kind of a really cute binder that held up the chart on either side like that. So it was really exciting and amazing, and the anecdotes that people told us, I took some videos of people talking about how amazing it's been and how they really sincerely feel that it's accelerating the children's learning of sounds. So it was really, I think those materials are being really, really well used.
Right. So to get to the question of what are the next steps or what are the recommendations, certainly, a move to really adopt Love Those Letters as the official ICSD alphabet. We've talked about how to do that through the Office of Curriculum Instruction. We have a pre-K-5 literacy committee coming together. But to really, we see it's being used everywhere, so let's make the commitment to making sure that we keep that going on a sustainable and systematic way. Another piece of that is I feel like by adopting it as our official alphabet, we can really work towards securing and systematizing the funding of not only the materials, but the professional development that goes with that. And it's funny, my husband asked, how much professional development do you need to teach the alphabet? But it's more about that sharing around best practices. How do you use all these resources and materials in really creative ways to get at all those learners out there and every different learning style. And I think most of it is just allowing time for teachers, educators to come together to share those best practices, because you can see from the pictures that they're doing, the work is being done out there. Yeah.
So, can we finish those? Go ahead, sorry.
Your husband
Those things we're probably in agreement with.
Yep.
And are you going to make that happen, or what?
Well, not by myself, but
what is that a board? What? When is this coming before, like how?
This is more of an informational item. I mean, in the coming months that we begin the budget process, there may be a line item that you may see an increase to Ms. Evelyn's departmental instructional support.
So this will come back to us and then we'll...
Yeah, as part of that process. But he needs this information and data to inform decisions that are coming months.
This is, right, this is the 24th, this is our voting meeting, we're not voting on this tonight, but we're going to finish up the next steps and...
Yeah, I mean, and some of it will happen now, like filming model lessons. Carol and I were talking, a lot of that is around intervention. So how to use these materials when students aren't making the progress we want to, that's kind of the next step. So getting some of those filmed just by taking a flip camera into the classroom and then using our new instructional management system when it's up and running to host those videos. So, and developing a Love Those Letters teacher resource book. We talked about doing that through a curriculum proposal this summer, which goes through the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, and getting a team of pre-K 2 teachers together to write that book, write that resource guide, and then the funding piece would be getting professional development to share that.
And we're going to wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up. Yep, we're way over our time. So, is there anything else you want to say?
I don't think so.
Okay. I just a couple of big picture takeaways too. I think is just as I think Eldred said, this is what we want to see come out of our sabbatic work. This really was a collaborative inquiry process by educators in our district and community members. I think continuing to support, promote, provide opportunities for this to happen is really where we're going to get that changing, that kind of innovative education that we want here. So continue that, and then support.
Carol, thank you, Lynn. Great work. We're going to come back to it again, I'm sure, and do more. And we're going to move right into a mid-year review process.
It's more of a, Mr. Knight, you can hop over up to the table.
Oh, I'm up. I'm about to fall asleep. It's past my bedtime.
I've asked Mr. Knight to come speak with the board, another informational item, just to update you on the process he's gone through as a building level leader and his staff has gone through as they've examined and evaluated what they do. A school that's in sending status, so he's going to talk a little bit about that designation and what that's meant for him. More about those 3 questions that we put in front of you as far as how we're leading mid-year review conversations instead of learning conversations. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Knight to share some of the work that's happening, exciting work that's happening in the building.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. First of all, I just want to say I'm amazed and I applaud your efforts for being, this cognitive and competent at 8:30 at night. Unbelievable. And so I'm winding down now, so forgive me if there's some slips in speech or some slur speech. I am winding down.
Can we get you some coffee, sir?
No, sir, no coffee. As Dr. Brown said, I'm giving you an update of what's occurring at DeWitt Middle School based on our notification of senior status this year. This is my second year here, and it was kind of one of those awakenings to come back in your second year and you've been identified as a senior school. So it means that it was kind of taken by alarm or by storm, so to speak. But anyway, I just want to say, even though I sit before you alone, I was not alone in this process. Throughout some terms you've probably been hearing from Dr. Brown's in terms of the teaching and framework initiative that he's began here in the district. So the first one coming to mind is collaborations. As I sit here, I just want to thank, let me see, Miss Evelyn, Dr. Myers, Tim Moon, and Lisa Harris. They all kind of brought me into the office and gave me one of these pep talk, inspirational talk, and support. Let me know that they was there for me. Not only did they have that initial meeting with me, but they also had some follow-up meetings as well, which included Denise Gumber, who BJM is very well known is going through the similar process. Also Sheila McHenry, who is Director of Special Education, which we were identified in that particular subgroup at DeWitt Middle School. So I just want to say thank you, colleagues, and also I was actually referred to Jared Powell, who actually went through this process, and he's been very instrumental in his support. We met numerous times and numerous hours in terms of trying to figure this out and how to do it at DeWitt properly. But I'm not here to talk too much about that particular process. I'm going to use some additional terms tonight because as you very well know, I started the school year off having hip surgery, and I had a kind of one of these unpredictable falls. So I can say this process kind of remind me of a CAT scan or MRI, if I must say so, but without pain medication. Okay, so but anyway, I like to anchor this in terms of this whole process. It was very insightful, all right, even though it was very laborious and it was very intense. I had a lot of support from my staff as well as from district office members, as I said. And having endured that, we kind of anchor it into the teaching and learning framework that, as I said, Dr. Brown rolled out as our initiatives. And the core of the teaching and learning framework occurs in the classroom. So what we're going to talk about is those three things that we look for when we go into the classrooms, and you've probably heard them numerous times. They are what do students know, or we want students to know. You probably know the second one, which is how do we know they know it? And the third one? Yeah, all right.
What are we going to do when they don't?
Got it. Okay, great. You're on point.
I mean, I'm kind of negative, so I didn't.
So, I'm just saying at DeWitt. So I'm going to speak in terms of what's happening at DeWitt currently in those areas, because as we begin this particular senior process and actually getting information evidence to complete the SQR, which is the school quality review, we didn't want to disaggregate the data that the state has kind of identified as. We want to look at all students achieving their dreams, so we took this approach for all students, not necessarily the student with special disabilities or special needs, which were identified for as a senior school. So in answering the first question, is what we want students to know, obviously 21st century learning skills, they're very, very important. And we want our students to be communicators, problem solvers, and critical thinkers, use high order thinking skills. What are we doing to enhance that? Well, there's a lot of things that we do there, okay? One of them is interdisciplinary units of studies. If you come to our Harlem Renaissance, where the students put on their display of kind of interdisciplinary between social studies, English, and art and music, then you will see some interdisciplinary projects that occur there. Also, immigration night. We also, at 6th grade level, we have China, we have rainforest, and that newly interdisciplinary project is Ithaca at the 7th grade level. In addition to that, we have projects, like in our tech program, students have to build this contraction out of a set group of materials that they're given, and they have 3 trials in terms of putting an egg, and they have to roll this particular object, drop it off the table, 3 attempts to make sure that egg doesn't crack. So those are kind of projects use problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, and also applying other things such as math skills and science skills as well in the tech program. We also have assimilations. Assimilations, the most recent one now is occurring during the Civil War, where people actually take on the roles of people who are very instrumental in the Civil War, and they have these debates and they have these kind of assimilations of what actually happened. Students take on these roles and they act them out, and they create their own particular skits based on what actually happened during the Civil War. So they're great. They just started. Usually last a week long. So those kinds of things in terms of trying to address the skills. Also, speaking to the new Common Core, New York State Common Core, I think the emphasis now on less contents and more skills, so hopefully that we can integrate some of these in the Common Core as well. We also, our staff are challenged to use our high-yield instructional practices to reach these and to implement these in the classroom, using Marzano's 9 common practices. The PLC, in which you probably heard many times, is something that's probably new, not new at the high school level, but definitely at the middle school level, offers an opportunity to collaborate and share and discuss what students should know in the classroom. Not just at DeWitt, but we also, Jason and I meet every 2 weeks, and so we're combining Boynton and DeWitt about instructional practices, about things that impact student achievement in the classroom at both of those particular middle schools. So that's been really exciting to do that. The second question is, I think, Seth, you had it right on point, is how do you know that students have learned what we want them to know? You probably heard formative common assessment many times. And we are in the process now of creating quarterly formative common assessment. That's obviously 835 now, but anyway, we're using those at both schools. We meet at least 6 times a year that we meet to discuss departmentally and formulate quarterly formative assessment of both schools in the subject areas. And hopefully the idea is that each of the staff at the respective schools get a chance to analyze their data, look at in terms of what's deficits, what kind of instructional practices they can use to increase student achievement in their respective areas. So we also use authentic assessments, rubrics. We really challenge our teachers to create those. And we also use student choice in terms of having a choice of assessments that a student can use. What we want to look forward to, what we want to work forward to, currently we have a 5 weeks progress report and a 10 weeks progress report. Right now we feel that's too long in terms of assessing where students are in terms of their success. I actually would like to reduce that to 3. I don't know if the board is going to challenge, having 3 weeks progress report because of paper, whatever the case may be. But it's important to look at progress at an early and often kind of approach. 5 weeks is too long to determine or to find out whether someone is failing in a particular class or not and try to do something real concrete and instrument about it. So we like to shorten a particular period of time as well. So what do we do when students haven't learned that, okay? Obviously, we are a data-driven district, and so we like to use the data from the formative assessments to reteach lessons. We like to use it in terms of using or writing lessons that are differentiated, called differentiated instructions. Let me see what else we have here. We also I use acronyms a lot. So we have this acronym called HELP, H-E-L-P. And so in terms of helping students, the H stand for home visit, the E stand for emails, the L stand for letters, the P stand for phone calls and parent conferences. So we use the HELP in order to help students and engage parents in the process of helping students who are failing, who need some support in terms of learning. We have RTI, and I think you kind of mentioned RTI. Everybody knows about RTI, so we have that as well. Even though it's a work in progress, and we need to improve upon that. We also have academic support during our study halls and during our lunchtime, which we also need to improve upon as well in terms of helping our students when we know they're not successful. Currently, what initiatives that we're currently doing this year based on our senior status, we created a watch list. Before we create a watch list, I challenge the staff to look at students from a holistic standpoint. All too often when they enter middle schools, that's their first level of secondary education. And we break them into little pieces, okay? First period they go here, second period they go there, third they go here, and fourth they go there, and so forth and so forth. For 6th grade, that's a very traumatic experience for them. So we're trying to look at it in terms of how we can maintain a wholeness as they transition from elementary school to middle schools. So we challenge staff to not only teach the foundation courses of English, math, social studies, and science, and other courses, but also to do some stretch. I think the district is real big on rigor, so we like to push students to stretch their learning beyond the classroom walls, and also to be able to adapt and apply knowledge in a predictable as well as unpredictable situation. We also look at personal development. I think that's a piece that's kind of missing, but we all struggle with because of behavior problems that occur in the school building and in the classroom. But the personal development is a huge piece of the whole child, and it would be remiss if we didn't include that in terms of trying to improve student achievement, to increase their success as learners. And the last one, you probably heard about this, selectively engagement. So we want to really use learners' engagement in this process as well. Again, I use an acronym called SCORE, S-C-O-R-E. S is for success, C is for curiosity, O is for originality, and R is for relationships, which is a part of the relationships rigor and relevant framework as well. And E is for energy. Those are 4 concepts that we use to promote engagement in the classrooms. So what we've done this year, I go back to watch list. The watch list is a list in which we identify students that scored level 1s and level 2 on state assessments, and those students were put on a list. And we began to watch them from September when they entered the building. This is from last year's results. And what we added to that was attendance, tardies, referrals, also parent contacts and parent conferences that they had. So I want to keep a current log so that anytime you look at a particular students, look at a particular watch list, you can see what has actually transpired, what has actually happened in terms of interventions and strategies to help their student become successful. We redefined the failing criteria. When I got into it, it was below 65, I think, 65 is failing. Now it's below 70, and next year it'll be below 75, and year after that below 80. In terms of trying to reduce or eliminate the achievement gap, we need to look at in terms of numerically how we grade students and how they internalize what those grades are in terms of their own success. So anything now 69 and below, student goes on the watch list. As before I got there, it was 65 and below, 64 and below went on the watch list. So we want to make sure that we are increasing the expectations and the rigor that we want students to perform at. We want to restructure RTI where it occurs at the grade levels. We have grade level teams, and so we have an RTI leader at each grade level team who is also a member of the school RTI teams. And so by having an RTI member at the grade level team, they can be more active and interactive with discussing strategies and interventions for student success at the grade level meetings. We're going to pilot PBIS, which is Positive Behavior and Intervention Support System. We need to create a system-wide process, system-wide behavior around, culture around students' character and behaviors in the building. We do have the Circle of Courage, as I said before when I introduced Seth, with generosity, belonging, mastery, independence. But we feel as though we need to have something more interactive, more that's reflective of both students and staff. And so the second semester, we're going to construct a positive behavior and intervention support rubric of what's appropriate behavior that students and staff can agree upon that should be expressed or displayed in the hallways, the cafeterias, the restrooms, the bus, and the classrooms. And so once we create this rubrics, we'll post in all the classrooms. It'll be at all the key locations where students can become familiar with it. So that will be kind of define our culture. In the meantime, we removed the ISS system that we had previous getting there. We added clubs this year. All students at DeWitt Middle School can become a member of a club, and they do become a member of a club. Every Thursday for 30 minutes, they have an assigned club, and it changes 3 times a year. So they're all a part of a club, giving a sense of belonging, allow for them to have a different relationship with a teacher who becomes the advisor, or allow for intra-grade interactions. Prior to that, 6th graders normally stay together, 7th graders normally stay together, and so for the 8th graders. But this allows opportunities for intra-grade interactions. So, and my goal is to help build more community. So we do more of these kinds of things to break down some of the stratification that the school has around academics. And lastly is the after-school academic support. As Dr. Brown alluded to, EDGE, DeWitt is also writing a proposal to have academic support after school hours to provide opportunities for our students. As you very well know, we have 38.8% of free and reduced lunch. A lot of those students don't have opportunities to get the kind of support that other students have at home to be successful in school. That's kind of all students and things we're doing for all students. Now getting back to one of the reasons why we're at Scenic, we have some recommendations that through our SQR that we have presented, but we have not received recommendations from the state level yet. Okay, we're waiting for that to happen. Once we receive those, then we begin constructing our CEP, which is our comprehensive educational plan. But in the area of special education, which we got identified as, some of the things we recommended were rewriting, having professional development for our special education teachers as well as general teachers to learn how to write IEPs better. We also going to look at in terms of matching the IEP skills to the content of the classroom. There's been a disconnect there, so while the student's skill is not being addressed, the content is still being taught, so we need to make some connection between the skill and the content. We're also looking at restructuring our resource rooms. Our resource room now about convenient in a schedule. We need to take a look at that and given the IEPs that has specific skills identifications, we need to group students by those specific skills, so it will allow the resource room teachers to teach kind of homogeneously to that particular group of students, as opposed to having them group by schedule. You can have a math deficiency, a writing deficiency, a reading deficiency, and they're all in the room at the same time. Whose needs to get addressed during that 39 minutes period of time? So it became a question. So we really need to restructure our resource room for the special education. The other things that we recommend around scheduling, as I alluded to before, our 6th grade program really need to be scheduling. We're looking at flex scheduling for staff, starting school day late and staying later. core area teachers to provide interventions in their subject areas during study hall times, as well as having interventions throughout the course of the day from period 1 to period 9, or from before school through the school day to after school. Another thing is RTI. Is that I think the district is looking at having universal screening, so we definitely will be happy to have that. We need to get better at in terms of using progress monitoring, the data from progress monitoring to target, student success in classroom. So there's a few things that we have recommended, for in terms of looking at DeWitt Middle School under that particular lens of the SQR and seeing the process. So thank you for having me.
Wait, that was, there you go, Matt. Way to crank.
I'm crashing.
Take a breath, and Elbert will have a very short question for you.
Short?
It's typically rhetorical, so.
You don't get to say anything.
Mac, I'm giving you a break here, Mac, so go ahead, Elbert.
It's not rhetorical. I know I'm getting better at this, because I actually understood the words coming out of your mouth. Okay. Pat myself on the back.
No, that's fast.
But
You go back to the first inning here, Mr.
Exactly. If you could you try to summarize all of the things you said through sharing with the group a story? Now, I obviously don't want you to get into identities, but there is a young child who we had a relationship with, who started middle school, who started to actually exhibit some of the behaviors you articulated that we want to address. And the way you articulated to me, or how you began to package a plan around that child to address all of those things, I think would be very useful for the group to hear. Because when you said all of that to me, it took 2 minutes, and you actually hit on almost everything you said tonight. But that's how we think in terms of children. So do you think you could do that, and you can talk slowly while you do it?
All right, that's because I'm on overload right now. To summarize a particular child going through this process, if it was a child that was identified at level 1 and a level 2 on state assessments, he or she would be placed on a watch list in which all staff who look at that particular child would have information around. We will keep weekly data on that particular individual, referrals, tardies, absences, and also grades in terms of their assessments. The team in which that particular child is on, whether 6th grade team, 7th grade team, 8th grade team, will meet to discuss any times. I think we have set criteria for 3 tardies, 2 absences. That particular child will be brought for discussion that week, because we can't wait for 3 absences. We cannot wait for students to have 5 or 6 tardies from a class. At that particular point in time, of course, you heard RTI is tier 1. That team will begin looking at what kind of interventions, what kind of strategies to help that student be successful, whether it's behavior, whether it's academic, whether it's getting to school on time, or whether it's attending all his or her classes. Okay, from that, we will do some progress monitoring, whatever interventions that we put into place. We need to get better at that. We're not really thoroughly good at progress monitoring targeted interventions yet, nor are we really good at writing lesson plans that supports targeted interventions as part of the lessons. But those are the things that we know we have to do in order to get better. Over a period of time after progress monitoring, we will make some determinations of whether that particular student go to RTI, which is tier 2. Which there will be another level of intense interventions and discussions around how we can assist that particular student to be successful. So that's kind of the nutshell. In the meantime, we have that help system, home visits, emails, letters, parents, phone contacts in operation all the time. There will be a particular level where there'll be teacher managed and behaviors at the tier 1 level, and at the tier 2 level become office managed. It means that administrators, counselors, social workers, psychologists all become involved. Not to say we won't be involved at the tier 1 level, but it become more meaningful for us to get involved at the tier 2 level when the classroom teachers and the support that they have tried to glean from the resources in the building as well as from themselves is not working. Is that helpful? And was that slow enough? Yes. Okay. Yes, sir.
Anybody else get that?
I got it.
Is
Now, you said it would be ideal to move to a 3-week review process? Marking, evaluation. What does that look like? Because that's a lot of work.
Well, it may not have to be...
I take that back. It's frequent work.
Well, you're right, but I think we're moving to electronics. You know, I think we're looking at instructional management systems. So we're looking in terms of employing those things. It can happen, and the least amount of paperwork will go to those people who do not have access to, you know, electronics, you know, devices that can access those grades. The other piece, you know, along with that is the state is moving toward numerical gradings, which raises some real concerns about feedback to a student as well as a parent. You know, what does 75 mean to one parent versus another parent? So that's why the frequent feedback is more important, because you wait to 5 weeks to give a 75 or 10 weeks to give an 80. What does that mean during a particular period of time? So there's concerns on both fronts. I use the phrase early and often, and I really push that. I use little phrases, pet phrases like the little acronyms with my staff so they can ingrain and remember that. So early and often is our rule of thumb in terms of intervening in students' lack of success. So 3 weeks, I think, whether it become universal or become uniform, obviously will give us a mindset that in 3 weeks we need to look at what McKnight is doing, okay, across the board, okay, as opposed to 5 weeks.
No, I agree with it. And I think it's beneficial because you can intervene before it gets worse. Right. I just wanted to know what it looked like.
Well, the district has just you know, an instruction management system that Dr. Brown kind of gave in the PLC yesterday. I forgot the name of it, but that's the kind of system we're looking for communication. I think we need to, within the context of our building, everybody needs to look up, to push some buttons and pull up McKnight. What is the target intervention? What is people working on for McKnight? How I, as a librarian or occupational therapist, can contribute to that success of that student. So everyone in the building who may know me or have a relationship with me can contribute, whether I'm in a class or not. You know, so that's the kind of communication system we need to house some of the progress of the students in terms of progress monitoring and be efficient and effective with it.
We're calling it the teaching and learning portal.
Teaching and learning portal.
Everything in one place, one place for everything.
Right. So, and we're looking for that because the RTI, in order for RTI to be successful and follow the students, I think, where's Jared? He's still here. One of the concerns we brought up in terms of transitioning our students from middle school to high school, how much information traveled with them that would empower him to do class selections, his you know, those kinds of things. So if it's housed somewhere, click of a button, he knows all those students and all the background information, which enable his staff and for his FTE, assigning FTE, to do a little bit more efficient and effectively before September or later October when you lost 5 weeks of schooling. Okay, the universal screening definitely helped us out too, because in most screening process, given the state assessment, happen 1 time a year. Universal screening happens 3 times a year, okay, where you keep a current update on a student progress of what he or she is doing in the classroom. And allow us to intervene a little bit more actively in terms of what kind of resources, you know, that we can give him or her, okay?
Other questions for Mac?
Yeah.
We're going to let Mac go home soon, but go ahead.
No. So it would go 3, 6, 10.
No.
Go ahead, Judy.
Go ahead.
It would go, the weeks would be 3, 6, 10, and the 10 would have...
You know, it's just something that we would like to incorporate. I'm not saying it's something that has to happen, but in terms of looking at, even from a team perspective, whether it's something uniformly done throughout our district or done throughout our building, but yes, we could do 3 weeks and 6 weeks and 9 weeks and then give a 10 weeks progress report, or give 3 weeks, a 5 weeks progress report, or 6 weeks to see how it's implemented, how it's done, or 9 weeks to see how effective it is, and then 10 weeks, you know, progress report. So that's something that we're thinking about doing, okay, in terms of as I said, early and often, okay?
Right, Mac, it may not be a hard grade, but as a community member, as a parent, I would expect my teachers and my principals to know how my kid's doing, right? And it shouldn't be a leap to go ahead and give me just a quick idea of you know, on those 3-week basis of where my child is. But I don't know.
And it should be skill-based. I think, you know, right now, as I said before, the numerical equation of what a student has done in 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever the case may be, is not a clear picture of skills, what he or she has done successfully, what he or she needs to improve upon. Right now, I was at LACS, and, you know, they give this narrative, I think, of being kind of alluded to that. So that's the feedback I think we need to be giving folks, you know. And I think we also need to be involved in the student process, too, which I haven't really talked about, but I like to move DeWitt and Sapphire School in creating the student data portfolio, where right here is a lot of talk about teachers being held accountable, what we are doing, and parents being held accountable. What's the student doing to be responsible for his or her own education? They kept a portfolio of graphs that goes around those particular things and that follow them. They give us this responsibility for who they are, a sense of confidence, build some self-esteem around it. So to go to a system where student data portfolio is given to each student and kept the binding follows them where they go, but they manage it. And people can talk to them about it and help them set goals around it, okay? They can reflect on it, they can write journal entries about it. So they give them a own personal snapshot of their own personal growth and development as opposed to us telling them, well, you haven't done this, you need to do that, okay? And they can see it for themselves, which takes some ownership. So I haven't even talked about that yet, but that's just some of my creative, visionary thinking, okay? All right? That kind of matches Dr. Brown.
I appreciate that, Matt. We appreciate visionary thinking.
Yes, Mr. Malcolm.
Just don't give it an acronym, we gotta know.
I have some more for you, buddy. Okay.
Anything else for Mac?
I was trying to get through in 10 minutes. That's what I told I had.
I think you're, well, we had you down to 20.
Yeah, for 20?
But you've met and exceeded that 20, so.
Well, thank you for having me.
What kind of lights were they?
Yes.
What kind of lights were they?
That's,
Oh, okay, there was icicle lights. Okay, we want to know the truth about them, which I would never, I gave them away, so.
Not again, huh?
Not again.
See, Mac, I thought in Cortland County, we just kept the Christmas lights up all year round, but that's okay.
Maybe some parts of Cortland County. We're progressing in some areas.
Thank you, Pat.
We appreciate all your work, Mac, and we'll get another update soon. And we're gonna do budget.
Yes, we are going to transition to budget.
Do we need a 5-minute break? Because we need a 5-minute break before we talk about budget, I think.
There's only 4 slides.
It's only 4 slides. Led by Ms. Wayne. Yeah.
I'll sit for that.
Do you want to? No, it's a question of.
Well,
Brad, you want to?
How quick a learner you are.
You ready to go?
Doc, you got the slide right there?
Myself and Mr. Grant are going to partner. Margaret is out.
Right, I wasn't sure how.
Let's push through you off the end of the front. Yeah, we're good.
Somebody put down 30 minutes for this, so I wasn't sure whether.
Well, we have 4 slides, and Margaret couldn't make it tonight. I didn't see her.
First look, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good guys.
I talked with her today. She sounded awful. So
Get well, Margaret.
she's not here. And I see I pretty much emptied the joint out.
Budget?
Yeah, budget, way they go. So, here we have tax levy limit 101. How do we calculate our tax levy limit? You'll recall that the legislature and the governor want to limit us in our potential increase in the tax base, and you'll also remember that unlike towns, villages, cities, and counties, we have to send our budget to the voters. If we decide we want to go greater than the tax levy limit, we would have to have a 60% positive vote, not just a 50%. So that's why it's of rather keen interest to us as to what exactly that number is. So I'm going to walk through this slide quickly. Top line, last year's tax levy, $69,750,000. The state tells you what they think your tax base growth is going to be. That's a state-given number. That's not a number based in reality.
And countywide.
And countywide. It's not based in reality. It's mythical. So that says that we have if you did nothing other than just increase for the tax base, you'd be at $70,450,000. We get some revenue from pilots. You then deduct what you get that you use of your tax levy for capital.
Local share.
Local share, you deduct that out, and then you go up by 2% from that. Then you take out the pilot revenue
That you added
that you added in before. I know. Hey,
it.
listen, I didn't make this up, man. The legislature did, so don't blame us. Then you put back in what you're going to need for your local share of capital. You see it's a little higher than it was last year. You put that back in. Then you've got a couple of items that are excluded from the cap. And in our case, it's the TRS and ERS, Teachers Retirement System and Employees Retirement System, both going up more than the allowable cap. Therefore, you are allowed to, if you wanted to, raise the taxes more to cover those. There's another $277,000 there. So what does that equal for our tax levy limit plus our exclusions? $72,201,000. Our potential, our limit then is the $2,451,000, the bottom line there, or 3.51%. Our problem, of course, is that unfortunately the governor's office told everybody it was 2%. And I know some folks who've been following it. The city had a similar conversation. City of Ithaca had a similar conversation because theirs was more than 2 also, and their cap and so forth. So we're limited at.
What was it, 3.5?
3.51 is what we're limited to. So if we were to ask for 3.52, it would require a 60% positive vote. If we ask for 3.51, it's a 50% vote.
So again, to ask that differently, what you're saying is if we follow the governor's 2% tax levy cap, it would basically result in a 3.5% increase in the tax levy.
That's correct.
Right, so that's the part that the public needs to
That's the part.
2% actually translates to a 3.5% increase locally.
That's correct.
Again, that's an estimate.
Well,
and that's a limit.
Yeah, it's a limit, and there's a couple of these numbers that aren't necessarily final. Is it TRS or ERS that's still a guess?
Then it's pretty close.
One of those is still a guess. So it can be refined. It's going to be in that order. It's going to be in that order of magnitude. It's going to be 3.5 plus or minus a bit going forward. All right, now we'll flip. Based on the governor's budget. Now remember how this works each year. The governor throws out a budget. Then there's the legislature may come back with a counter proposal, and then the governor negotiates, etc. But anyway, where we are in the state, in the governor's proposed state aid, our total state aid would go up $945,000. It's a very small amount in our foundation aid, but our BOCES use is up, so we get more based on what we use this year. You get reimbursed next year for that. Transportation aid is up slightly, and our building aid is going up because, as you're all aware, we're finishing a bunch of buildings, and now we're able to get aid for those from the state for those. So our total aid increase, and this again is based on the governor's proposal, $945,000. You add to that our tax levy limit. If you want to go from that number, the potential additional revenue would be $3,397,000 without going over the limit. That's kind of the max, staying within the limit that we think we're looking at. Flip. This looks at what if we said, okay, yeah, we can go to 3.5, but what if we only wanted to increase the tax levy 2%? Keep it actually to a 2%. Remember, we've been, over the last few years, plus or minus 2 by just a little bit. We've been 1.9, we've been 2.3, we've been right in that neighborhood.
Right, it should be noted that we have never gone to the voters with over a 3% tax levy increase. Not in the time that
most of us have been on the board.
Exactly.
That's correct. So if we did a 2, what's our potential new revenue? $2.34 million. A little over 2% total on our $103 million budget. But before you get ready to spend all that money and get all excited, please save the ugly part for the end. That's just the first one. Just tells you that our foundation aid of the 900,000, only 235,000 of it is foundation aid. I mean, it's not a very significant piece. Then in red, you know, what we're going to lose in the way of federal funds. You've heard in the newspapers and others the term funding cliff. We've had this federal money. We've used it. I think we've used it in a number of different programs. We're looking at a loss of $1.4 million, $1,398,000. So if you want to flip back a slide, put that $1,398,000 against your 2%, you're looking at a $1 million increase in net revenues. If you do a 2% tax levy increase, for us, that's actually a slightly less than 1% increase. So, I don't want to cry the blues, and I don't want to make it sound cataclysmic. There's a lot of discussions going on in school districts where that number's not positive. It's actually a negative number. So I don't want anybody here to feel that it's cataclysmic. It's a challenge, and so we're going to be looking at what I would call a very low growth budget. I think that's the fair way to put it. Sir?
I'm surprised Margaret didn't have another slide in red that talks about our increased contributions for retirement and for, I'm blanking, what's the other very large?
Healthcare. Yeah,
you added those. Will our 1 million that we actually think we have disappear?
Oh yeah, gone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they eat up. Those two items alone eat up more than $1 million. Absolutely.
So we actually effectively won't walk away with any.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
I would add beyond that, it would also be our debt service as well, which is increasing. This next year will be the peak, and then we start to come back down.
Yeah,
but it increases by I think $300,000 or $400,000. So even in other words,
much of which is we're covered in aid. That's where. Remember, we're only getting $235,000 in foundation aid, and when you read in the newspaper about aid. You remember the governor and the legislature have agreed to an $800 million increase in aid. 200 and some million of it is for building aid, BOCES aid, transportation aid, that is basically a reimbursement, so it goes up. It'll be going up next year. They've set aside $250 million of it. The governor has at this point for a competitive grant program, the rules of which nobody knows. In fact, last year's $25 million, I know Susan's nodding her head, last year's $25 million they've spent nothing because there's no program for that yet. I mean, I think Dr. Brown would be ready to apply and fill out an application. We don't know even what
you're applying for.
What that 25 is for, and now he's proposed 250, leaving much less to go to foundation aid, and that's why our foundation aid increase is so small.
There is pushback on that 250 number. The Commissioner of Education has stated that he would like to see 50 million and 200 million go back to rural poor districts anywhere, rural districts.
Yeah. So stay tuned, but I think that's, and I don't know, Dr. Brown, were you looking for any direction tonight?
We're going to be going through a process the next few weeks to develop a budget around some of these numbers. And I would like to hear from the board. Last year we used a tiered approach, and we used a particular percentage for the first tier, another percentage for the second, and 0% for the third. I would like to hear from the board whether or not you wish for us to continue with that approach to this.
Yeah.
And maybe use that 3.
The 3-5.
3-5 is one approach.
The 2
and 0.
And 0.
Yeah.
I think. Unless there's folks who want to go over the 3-5, but we've not done that in the past few years. I think it would be, a hard sell for the voters. We've been fortunate by keeping it low. We've had a very positive vote the last couple of years. Last year it was 70% for the budget. We had a positive vote. The years before, by keeping it low, I think we should continue down that route. I'd like to use the 3-5 as kind of the top one, 2, and then if we look at 0, it'll
joke.
Go ahead, Jim.
I don't know, I think, I don't know if there's a point in doing the zero. We've got contractual obligations that just push us, be it salaries and health insurance and retirement, that I wondered if we should do 3.5, 2, and something in between.
One other thing then, Sean.
I understand that, and in reality, Jay, I get it, but at some point in time, I'm still not sold that we always have to increase the budget. And so I still like seeing that number because it's not sustainable to continually raise the tax levy. It's just not sustainable. And so it's got to be a 0% increase at some point in time. And so I'd like to know what that number is. And not to say that to have the group doing this work that we're not going to look at. I get the idea. But I think we should be prepared for what that looks like, particularly since there's a number of folks who are telling us that they can't afford additional increases. And so I'd like to know what that means for our community and for our school district if we were to put forward a budget that had no increase in the tax levy.
And 0 might be somewhat useful because the contingency budget calculation is far different this year. If the budget does not pass twice, it does not go.
It used to go up in inflationary.
Right. They used to do a calculation, so your budget will be flat. Aid will be, you cannot spend more than you did the prior year. So
I'd like to have 4.
4%?
No, I'd like to have 4 scenarios.
Gotcha.
So one tier between 2 and 0.
Yeah. No, between 2 and 3.5.
2 and 3.5.
0 to
3 and 3.5.
3 and 3.5, or something like that?
Yeah.
Well, you have to go.
Somewhere. I don't know where, but
You have to
we'll
go
here.
We'll massage.
You have to go 275. Then anyway, it was Brad, then Albert.
I'm sorry, Albert. The only other thing I want to make sure everybody here on the board remembers is we've been pretty good at balance sheet management for the last few years. We actually do still have reserves. Now, we used some this year. A little bit the year before. We used it more aggressively this year. I'm assuming we're going to use it aggressively again next year, given given the numbers that we're looking at here. But we've been fortunate. We're in a reasonably good position. We'll be able to put $2 to $3 million of reserves toward.
Right. We have reviewed those numbers in audit and in finance again.
So there'll be more.
I guess what I wanted to say is the second half of that sentence. I'm glad Brad went first. Dr. Brown, to the extent you can, have Margaret factor in our desire and our history of squirreling away as much as we can, which allows us the cushion from which we can do these expenditures. So to Sean's points, I know 0 sounds good, but as long as we can keep building the rainy day fund, I would like us to keep building the rainy day fund, because eventually the X is going to hit the fan and we're actually going to need it. And now my wife is going to really hurt me for saying that, but it's a consideration.
Brad, you might be able to answer this. Isn't the system sort of geared that if you're penalized if you suppose you do a 0 increase, that rolls over to the next year, doesn't it? In a sense.
Well, it depends on what you zero. If you don't keep growing like your BOCES or your transportation or things that are reimbursed the following year, then yes, you continue to have drop-offs in aid because you spent less the year before.
The compounding
issue. It continues downward.
Only that? You don't think that in general, if you
hold your foundation aid, that's based on wealth index and number of students.
Right.
Okay.
And remember, we're on the wrong side of the wealth index when it comes to distributing aid in the state. When they talk about rural, low wealth districts, they're not talking about us.
Close.
But we know people.
We're close.
Everybody around us
we're
is.
close. Everybody around us is. And we're close. We're just over it, but.
Not with the resources we have.
I have a direction we need to get busy and begin this process to build a budget. What we're doing, like we did last year.
Again, we're not creating out of whole cloth, I guess. I mean, there's certainly planning has been ongoing over the years, and we're going to build on last year as we have with reserves and our programming, and personnel, et cetera. So it'll be, we're looking forward to, but you have to bring to us, and we'll keep working on it. We are going to be addressing the budget issues at every month, at every meeting, essentially. Yeah, here on out. Correct. So expect to see budget development on your agenda. And we'll try to do it before 9 o'clock, but tonight we kind of ran into the 9 o'clock hour. You did start late because we talked too much, I guess, but now and then. We have our conversations, which is, we have lots to cover, so anything else regarding the budget discussion? Brad, you good?
I'm good.
So we will have Margaret back with us the next time. And on to any board announcements at this time regarding anything, committees, etc. Not yet.
On the board, not long.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got on the board
Let her
level.
talk.
2 seconds. The board should be expecting to participate in some of the board policy work. There's a couple policies that are going to require us to have some conversations about board self-evaluation, board goals and objectives, etc. Be on the lookout. I know you're all excited for it. I'll be in touch soon.
We love the work, Sean. Eldred?
Just want to share that I was at an alternative school where they rededicated, I'm not sure what they call it, but they have banners up in the newly repurposed gym, and the founder of the school, David, came back and actually addressed the school while those signs went back up. It was pretty amazing. The kids were definitely evidencing full engagement. It was a wonderful moment.
Mission statements.
Mission statements. And if I call you kids, do you actually get offended?
No, we like to better than big adults.
Anyone else? The kids are all right, I guess. Is that anything else surround? And again, the upcoming committee meetings are listed on the agenda. They're listed on the websites, etc. So ongoing for all the committees. Reprise, I guess. Anyone?
I got some, yes.
You two have been having a nice conversation through most of our meetings, but if you would like to
Very
speak.
focused on what you're saying and the numbers, I want you to know.
It was, I was hearing Mac and other conversations through the whole meeting, but go ahead and speak if you want to now by yourself.
Robert.
No, just calling you out a little bit, but that's okay.
That's okay, I do that all the time.
Yeah,
I'm very
I know you do, but so go ahead.
And you know what, Ellen, you can call me a kid, I'm okay with that. Anyway, I just wanted to say, and thank you for calling us out, we'll be very quiet next time. I appreciate that.
That's because she's not coming back.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I'm very happy with the leadership that we have at the high school, and it's been a long time that I've said that. The last time I said it, didn't go as well, but we now have a person who's been there at least 5-6 months, and I'd like him to be able to stay longer, and I hope you guys continue to support and realize that we've had a place that has not been very stable for a long time. So it takes a while for it to get back to a stability level, and I think we have a good leader to do that. So I want to put that forward, that I appreciate your having selected and put forward a good candidate, and we appreciate it at the high school.
Great. Thank you. And well, thank you for that. And we certainly agree, and I would push that back. I would hope that the staff is going to be supportive as we go through these next years, and so it's going to go both ways. And I appreciate that. And Susan, you're going to speak.
Yeah, so the first comment deals with the reason why we were having conversation. We're sitting here in the room, as you can see, overwhelmed by the number of people who are participating and listening to some really interesting information gathered. And it's hard to sit in the side and not be able to listen and comment as you're able to do and question. And part of the frustration was the conversation that Mac was having about a 3-week rotation. It's not about monitoring students and consistency. It's about adding that to the other very long list of skills that we are developing doing in assessments, in differentiated instruction, in data gathering, in reporting, and in returning, and having 120 students in a day to which you're doing this. I'm not telling you it's impossible, that is part of the job. But before we add more data and more numbers and more, let's add time to work with the kids and to meet with them. We're a group of students who walk out of an exam after a limited amount of time, after you do everything to be sure they're there. You call them, you pick them up, you bring them here, you hold their hand, and after just an hour, they get up and walk out. And you pull out your hair and you say, what can we do to engage these students in these exams? I've given them everything. I've fed them oatmeal, I've called them, I've given them workshops, I've come in before and after school, everything I know how to do. And they get up and they walk out. It's really discouraging. So, yes, reporting that they're doing 65 work and 68 work and so on, every teacher every day can tell you where their kids generally are. So I like the idea of monitoring and being on time, but I really want us all to really think and discuss about how we're going to go about and do it. Because it's a nice idea, but I don't know where you find the time.
I think what Mac was saying, and I want to speak for Mac, is that we need to catch these kids early. First it was 65, now he's raising it to 69. And before you come to us and tell us it's difficult, I'd rather you tell me how we're going to do it.
I'll tell you how we'll do it.
Oh, wait, hold on. Because I love what Mac said, and I support him. And I hear what you're saying, and I hear the hours in the day and how hard we're trying. And before we vilify the children, let's give Mac his time, and let's get our 3-week. Let's offer the solution. Hey, okay, for the kids who are falling 69 and the ones who are above, we only focus on the ones that are doing poorly, like we said we would do with the. So how about that?
No, that's, Chris, the point I'm trying to get across is we need to have the conversation. I'm not saying that. No, you raised a very good point. But I'm going to tell you where the next step is, where I see it. Every parent wants to know every 3 weeks on every child and what they're doing. And I think it's great. When are we going to go and have this family conversation that includes the kids at the table that says, how you doing? What happened today in school? You got a lot of parents and community that tried but aren't there. You know why Family Partner and Reading Partnership works? It's because we've got the parents in at the base level. We're giving skills. Yesterday I attended a wonderful workshop on bullying for paraprofessionals and aides and teaching aides in the classroom to identify behaviors and to actually discuss what you can do to increase engagement and diminish confrontations and altercations. It was really good. It was really wonderful. I was sad that the room wasn't filled to the brim, but it was good. It was a time when people who we employ, we being the district employ, had an opportunity to really learn. There were no teachers in the room. So, you know, it was a terrific workshop. I was proud to be there. I was glad to interact. I learned a tremendous amount. And the two unions are going to get together to see what we can do to increase the collaboration between those who are assigned into a physical area so that we can work more as a team rather than as teacher or aide or whatever classification you want to give. It takes time and effort. People loved yesterday and hated it because you get started and you got to stop. And today you have the kids. It's important for all of you to hear, speaking truth to power, about the kind of effort and time people are putting in. I'm not saying you're wrong. We're not sitting at the table and having a conversation. We're back here. And we're involved. And what you're hearing as conversation is engagement, a means to discuss what it means. And I'm so appreciative for Brad giving the numbers. I don't like them, but I'm appreciative that somebody worked at it, because what he's saying is ringing very true, but he's saving me a lot of the math so that I can sit there and look at possible solutions and answers, because we're going to the table and we're going to discuss it. And I know already what you generally have expressed as your opinion about it. But we want the best and the brightest, and we need to attract and retain people in this district. And unfortunately, it's not all about the kids, it's about money. And we want to make it about the children. And Dr. Brown and I have been working on the APPR. It is a fine document, and it's coming far. We are way ahead of others. It's hard work. People work Fridays and Saturdays and on weekends, and listen carefully to the interactions they've had with different board members and brought that to the table. Those conversations are really valued, and you need to know it. A lot of you see me as the voice of opposition, but I'm not. I'm trying to help you hear the voice on the other side so you can understand some of the frustrations, and we can go to a common goal rather than you need to be better at it and you need to do it. You've got some great people here who are really trying hard. So I thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
I can't recognize you, has to recognize you.
Susan, I'm saying this directly to you.
Oh, okay, yeah,
So,
sure.
I heard your passion and I listened to you yesterday, and I just have to thank you for what you said yesterday.
Thank you.
In front of the group,
Mm-hmm.
in collaboration with our superintendent. But language is critical. So if we're making errors in language, you have to address yours. You started out, the first words you said were, it's
Here
not
or
about
yesterday?
just now.
Oh, okay. No, I just want to know when.
What we were saying about the 3 weeks is not about the kids. It's about the teachers.
No, that isn't what I said. I don't,
I recorded it.
Let me say it. That was not my
That
intent.
was the sentence you used.
Okay.
It's not about the kids, it's about the teachers. I'm not going to accept that from anybody.
Well, that was not my
The reason why I
intent.
just sat here and said we extended his contract is because he's reversed the conversation to make it about children. So I will know we are healing this us versus them when your first words are, it's about both the children and our teachers and their capacity to do the work.
Am I allowed to respond or do I wait?
Sir, I mean, you're
My
having, Susan, you're having a conversation, just
Yeah, but my
last word,
intent,
Susan.
I don't pre-write the notes. My intent is to let you know the frustration. What you see, the hat I have on, is the union hat. I am an elected, appointed, and employed voice for teachers who are feeling frustrated. The teachers that I know are committed to their classes to the point where they don't want to leave for other things. They really are committed. They work very, very hard and need to hear over and over again how much time and dedication they've done, that we appreciate it, and this is what we're doing. Look at where we were a year ago and look at where we are now and tell me we haven't made incredible progress. You can't, and neither can I.
I'm just
And
saying.
I'm just,
You're
but I'm
challenging us with our
frustrated when I
language.
sit,
I'm challenging you.
and
on
I
yours.
told you about my intent, and I'm sorry that it did not come out in a way that you can interpret that way. So let me stand and correct the statement. It's always about the children. But my role is to tell you that without the teachers, the kids are not going to make it to the level that they can with the teachers. And the teachers and the children are the partnership. And we're just the ship that helps steer it and guide them. Because it's the day-to-day interaction that makes that child engage in and want to be successful. And we're not there when the kids walk out.
When we fail,
I think
my wife has to arrest them. And there have been moments where she's had to actually risk pulling out her firearm.
I know.
On one of the children that we're talking about,
I know.
who would benefit from a 3-week interpretation of their progress.
I don't have a problem with
So if
that.
you want to talk about passion, you're not the only person on the side of the table speaking with passion. I'm just saying that.
But we have to have it
This
as a
is-
conversation. And that's all I was
It's a
asking
conversation
for.
about language.
It's a conversation about intent and about collaboration and partnership to get to the point where I don't even have to call that woman to the scene, where I can speak with a student or a child and they know I care and I'm there and I'm going to make it happen. But if they don't want to learn and they don't want to be there, I could dance naked on the table. No, that would scare them. I could dance on the table and I can't get them to do it. I can't make a child learn. I can make a child want to learn, and I can help them. I can take the horse to water, but I can't make it drink, and that's some of the anger and frustration we're facing today. As teachers came to me and said, what else can I possibly do so that these children will understand the importance of taking a Regents and passing it, of getting a high school diploma, of wanting to be here. I really want these kids to succeed, and that's the frustration I was hearing today. Now tomorrow, we start again.
I think I heard there was some common understanding that we've come a long way in 1 year, and we have another year to go here. So
That's it, few more years.
so we have come a long way in 1 year. That's a common theme for tonight, and we're going to end it.
I move to adjourn.
We're going to end it now. Feel free to carry on conversations as we carry on.
We were adjourned.
We have to go.